Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host. It's the day after Christmas, celebrating here a little bit, still in the Burton household. Also celebrating a little bit in Longhorn land. The Longhorns got back at it at practice this afternoon, early afternoon practice for Texas. Today, I want to go over some stats that I've been kind of coordinating and piecing together over the last couple of weeks as Texas gets ready to take on Washington in the All-State Sugar Bowl on Monday. I want to start by breaking it down. Michael Penix versus Quinn Ewers, the left-handed quarterback out of Tampa Bay, Florida, versus the right-handed gunslinger out of South Lake, Texas. The two guys got to where they're at in very different ways. Both are transfers. Penix originally signing with Indiana before opting to go to Washington. Ewers signing with Ohio State before transferring back to his native Texas. Penix made the cross-country trek with Kellen DeBoer. DeBoer was the offensive coordinator at Indiana prior to his stay as head coach at Fresno State. He then took the head job at Washington, and Penix has been there with him the last couple of years. You look at the stats from this year, guys, and it's really pretty simple. Penix led the country in passing overall. Just an absolutely phenomenal year for him. Had 302 of 466 attempts. That's only good for 66%, whereas Ewers was 248 of 359 for 71%. But if you notice, look at the yards per completion. While Penix was a little bit lower in completion rate, his yard per completion was a lot bigger, and that makes a lot of sense. Look at his TDs also. 33-21, he leads over Ewers. Yes, Ewers missed 2 games, maybe 2 games plus if you include the Houston game, but still Penix with a clear lead there. Also has more interceptions. Penix has put the ball into jeopardy a couple different times this year. So if you look at this off the cuff, you'd think that maybe Penix has a big lead on Quinn Ewers in some respects, and he does. He's a 6th-year player compared to Quinn Ewers. This is only his 2nd year starting. But really, Penix puts the ball in harm's way a little bit, even though he has that big play offense behind him. He does have a lot more experience, of course, leading the team to a 13-0 record this year, while Ewers led Texas to a 10-1 start, or a 10-1 record so far. Malik Murphy obviously starting 2 games in the middle there of the season for the Longhorns. Obviously, both guys are the straw that stir the drink for their teams. Penix is the leader. Ewers is the leader, although he seems to be helped out a little bit more brought along by Jonathan Brooks, Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, JT Sanders. Penix has been the guy in Washington now for 2 years. He was the guy at Indiana before that. So they're just in a different stage of their respective careers. But I think that Washington certainly has the edge at quarterback. I don't necessarily think it's 100-1. It's more like if Penix is the number 1 quarterback in the country right now, or a top 3 or 4 guy, I think that Quinn Ewers is a top 10, top 15 type guy as of right now. Now, let's go to the total offense, though, which these are the offenses these guys lead. You look at the first stat that I put up here. It's yards rushing, and this is where Texas is considerably better than the Huskies. Washington only rushing for 1,628 yards this season, 4.52 yards per attempt, compared to Texas's 4.93. Longhorns passing in comparison, though, down by about 700 yards to Washington's prolific passing attack. Look at that difference, almost a half yard difference in yards per attempt for Washington. This is one thing that might be surprising. We've heard last month just how good Washington's offense is, and they are very, very good. But if you look at total offense rank right now in yards per game, Texas number 9 overall, Washington number 12. The real difference is here. Red zone TD percentage. The Huskies are just absolutely deadly inside the red zone, whereas Texas at 17 of 35 is just below 50% in converting them into touchdowns. The Huskies simply led by their sixth-year quarterback have just executed better in the red zone. Time of possession, not a big difference here. Texas likes to run the ball a little bit more than Washington, thus the 31 minutes to 29-minute time of possession in favor of the Longhorns. All in all, I thought that the offense, if you look at it on the whole, is a lot more close than many people would give it. A lot of people just thought, oh, well, look, Washington's got the best offense by far. That's what they're known for, et cetera. But the reality of it is Texas put up some big numbers late in the season in particular. And I think they've been hitting on all cylinders of late. And so I think Texas can make this an offensive game and win this game in that way. That being said, the big difference overall is the yards rushing for Texas. The Longhorns, even without Jonathan Brooks, are going to have to lean on that running game. Last year in the Alamo Bowl, when the two teams played, Texas got nowhere running the ball. Now, Brooks was limited, and so they had to go with Keelan Robinson, since Roschon Johnson and Bijan Robinson both were out of the game or opted out for that game. But it's also interesting, Dylan Johnson wasn't there for Washington a year ago either, and he's their top running back with 1,100 yards or so this year. All in all, I think that these are two fairly close offenses, although, again, you'd have to give Washington a little bit of edge because of that red zone TD percentage. They are just absolutely deadly once they get in the red zone. I predict that red zone efficiency, if Texas can actually flip that a little bit and flip that script, it could come back and really bite the Huskies and pay big dividends to the Longhorns. All right, moving on to the defense. I tried to get a couple of the stats that are primary here to looking at the two defenses. Right now, Washington giving up 133 yards per game. Texas just 80 on the ground. Texas ranking number 3 in the country in yards per game, allowing just 2.8 yards per rush compared to 4.2 for the Huskies. That's almost a yard and a half difference. The Huskies, not horrible against the run, by the way. They're 38th in the country, but Texas is elite 3-yard, number 3 in the country there. Yards per game passing. Texas's defense has been maligned for its pass defense, right? Everybody says this is where it could be really difficult for Texas to keep up with Washington. That's more because Washington's offensive passing game is so good. They are absolutely great at throwing the ball. But look at this. Texas is actually a better pass defense than Washington. Texas is giving up just 240 yards per game compared to 263 for the Huskies. The national ranking between the two teams, Washington 120th in the country against the pass, Texas 94th. Of course, both teams, I will say this, both teams suffer a little bit from being ahead of their opponents so often that the opponents, like against Kansas State, literally just took to the air because they couldn't get anything done on the ground, and Texas had a big lead. Washington has played in front of its opponents almost all year long, meaning their guys have been taking to the air as well. Overall, total defense, Texas is a clear leader here by a 75-yard margin, 396 to 321. Total rank, and this is another surprise that people haven't watched this closely. Washington, number 90 in total defense. Texas, number 24. Here's the other piece that I think it could be key. And I talked about flipping that script on the red zone TDs. And if I can impart anything, it's these last two stats. Texas's defense only gives up touchdowns 45% of the time in the red zone. Washington scores touchdowns 75%. Okay. Now, Texas's defense is only giving up 45. If they can flip that and keep it at 45% compared to the 75 that they were scoring, that's big news. Also, Washington gives up 70% of touchdowns in the red zone. So if a team gets in to Washington's red zone, they're scoring touchdowns 70% of the time. Again, Texas is at 49% on its offensive group. So you compare that and flip that script. I think this game could come down to red zone execution, who can run the ball, who can fit the ball into tight windows on the goal line, that sort of thing. Play calling, perhaps even, will matter in this game between the Longhorns and the Huskies. One last piece, turnover margin. I thought it was significant. And Washington, as good as they've been, 13-0, you don't usually see teams go 13-0 and only have a +1 turnover margin for the year. They created 18 turnovers and gave up 17. Texas, meanwhile, created 23 turnovers and gave up 16. So again, another small data point, I think, that could point into the direction of the Longhorns. But all in all, it does look like they're two fairly equally ranked and equally regarded teams. I think Washington clearly has the better passing offense. Texas has the better running offense, and it is more balanced, clearly, as well. But both teams are juggernauts on offense, one ranked 9 and one ranked 12. And then Texas's defense against the run is elite, whereas you struggle to say where is Washington's defense elite at all. That doesn't mean they're not a good team. Obviously, 13-0 it speaks for itself no matter what conference you're in. All right, I think that's going to do it. I just want to run down those simple stats for everyone today because I feel like there are some misconceptions out there that Washington is much better than Texas in the secondary. Not necessarily true. That Washington is by far the better passer team. I do think they are, but it's not overwhelmingly so. We'll see what all this means. Keep in mind that one last thing I talked about, red zone defense. If Texas can keep Washington out of the end zone on 2 or 3 possessions and force field goals instead of touchdowns, and vice versa, if Texas can score touchdowns instead of kicking field goals and relying on Burt Auburn, I think Longhorns have a path to victory here in the national semifinal. All right, we'll be back this evening. Myself, Rod Babers, and we'll be talking about some of these stats and some advanced stats as well in the live stream tonight, as well as CJ Vogel. He'll be alongside talking the latest from practice earlier today. All right, that'll do it. For myself, Bobby Burton, this has been On Texas Football. T-minus 6 days to the Longhorns take to the carpet in the Superdome. Hook 'em.